Howdy peeps. Welcome to one more episode of Talking Paranormal with the Old Man. And as usual, I am the old man. And I feel it every day. Memory lapses and all that stuff. So if you're getting older, you have that to look forward to. Anyways, hope you're having a good weekend. It's not too bad here today. It's supposed to be in the upper 60s. But of course, being in Michigan, there's storms today. And she's going to see a state trooper tonight, and by her I mean Mother Nature. Tomorrow's supposed to be in the low 40s and snow flurries. Welcome to Michigan in the springtime. Anyways, not too much going on today. I ordered some soundproofing foam, I guess you would call it, and that's going to be here today. I'm hoping that I haven't noticed too much of an echo, but I'm hoping that that will eliminate some because when you do walk into my office, even though I got stuff on the walls, a lot of kind of stuff, it's a hardwood floor, and you can notice an echo just walking in here. So I have that coming today. I will put that in later on today. So the upcoming podcast a week from today, hopefully, there will be some difference as far as the audio, how it sounds. So the podcast for today is children and animals. Can they see spirits? Yes, they can. We have had experiences ourselves with our kids, not necessarily our kids, but people that we know, their kids have seen stuff. Animals, of course, cats and dogs are notorious for being screwy, anyways. And sometimes if they bark at something and you don't see it, doesn't mean that they're going senile. It means that they might see something that we cannot. Why is that? No freaking idea. The theory is that especially in animals that they can see in like a light spectrum that we cannot see, and that's one of the theories behind that. Again, and I've said this before, the paranormal, due to what other people want you to believe, is not an exact science. Okay, again, I've mentioned on this before. I hate the word paranormal expert because there are no experts. So the theory is that the animals can see in the spectrum of light that we cannot, and that's why they are able to see things that we cannot. Children, I think, everybody, maybe not everybody, but a lot of children have imaginary friends, and we have a saying that your child's imaginary friend might not be imaginary. So, but as you grow older, you know, kids that are young or younger, when they have an imaginary friend, personally, what I think is being told so many times, by their parents that okay, okay, Billy, stop it right now. You do not have an imaginary friend. See, there's nobody there, so stop it. And I think honestly that as the kids grow up, they stop talking about it because their parents, say stop it. And I think they, not necessarily they grow out of it. I just think that they stop using their ability, and that's a shame. But in this podcast, like I said, I'm going to have some examples because I have examples. If you notice, like the trend in my podcast that I do, I always have examples of things that we have encountered or people that we know, friends and family that we know have encountered things also. So it's not like, you know, I'm talking, third party, someone that I don't even know, talking about their experiences. No, everything that I talk about in my podcast, either we've experienced or family or friends have experienced. So, take that for whatever, but I think that that adds some credibility, I guess, if you've experienced it. Because it's easy to sit here and say, oh, yes, I read that, so and so, so and so. Well, reading is fine, you know, but to have experienced it and then talk about it, I think that's, pretty cool. So again, this podcast is children and animals. Can they see things that we cannot? So the first example that I have, or story, I guess you would say, is years ago, and I don't remember how many years ago this is or was. Uh, Brenda, the wife, she took our two kids over to her mom's house. It was probably a weekend, Saturday or Sunday, whatever. And Brenda had lost her brother in the mid 80s. The kids obviously were not around, they weren't even born in the mid 80s, obviously. But they've seen pictures, and since he's no longer with us, his name was Richard. Hold that thought for a second. Now, that was some weird shit. Okay. Okay. I'm sure you guys heard that loud pop. Okay. And I'm like, what the hell was that pop? Well, on my desk, I have a picture frame of when me and Brenda got married, and I'm looking at it right now, and it had my cousin Pam, I'm sorry, my cousin Mark, rest in peace, and his wife Pam, rest in peace. Okay, there is no vibrations in this room whatsoever, and that was me putting the picture down. There's no vibration. I was not. I'm sitting in my chair. I have a a gaming chair, and I'm sitting in my chair. I have a two-piece desk. It was on the other side of my desk there. That picture frame fell over. Okay, I'm not moving. I'm sitting in my chair. So, not saying that it was Pam or Mark that knocked that over, but it's coinky dinky that I'm talking about spirits and animals that, children and animals can see things. And that picture frame fell over. This picture frame has been sitting on my desk for since I put it here 3 weeks ago. Has not fallen over one time. And it chose today to fall over. See, so some people, the so-called skeptics, whatever, would say they would, shoo it off. They would shoo it off as, oh, it just, there was something, by wind or, okay, the only window here is closed. The blinds are closed. We have no central air in this house. Unfortunately, it gets hotter than hell in the damn summertime. There's no breeze. The door's closed. I'm by myself. And at the time today, that picture frame fell over. Freaky. Am I scared? Not a bit. Am I intrigued? Hell yeah. Why did that fall after 3 weeks? It just fell. Okay? So that was the loud bang that you heard. And I don't like to pause stuff during my podcast because it throws me off track a little bit. But that's weird. So let's get back on track. So I was talking about the kids going over to their grandmother's house. They had seen pictures of Richard. And you know what? It might have been Richard. I just, a light bulb just went off over my head. It could have been Richard. I'm not saying it was, but I was just talking about him. Okay, that adds a whole different twist. The wife is over to her mom's right now. She goes over there on Sundays for a coffee. I'm gonna have to tell her about this because that's weird. Okay, so our kids, yeah, her kids, yeah. So our kids have seen pictures of Richard. Their grandma and grandpa have talked about Richard. Well, one time they were pulling in over there and they were pulling into the driveway. And if you pulled into the driveway, the front porch is right there. You can see into the front door. And I'm assuming it's probably Jessie because she's older. So Jessie said, "Mom, there's Richard." As they pulled into the driveway, he's at the front door. He's waving at us. Mom, wave back at Richard. And of course, Brenda's look. She's like, there's no one there, dude. And she's like, our daughter, Jessie, "Hi, Richard. Mom, wave to Richard. He's waving back at us." And she even described what he had on, So, again, coinky dinky? I don't think so. It's like why would our daughter, or for that matter, any kid, make up a thing that was like not there, and it wasn't like she is, bringing attention. You know how, such some of these kids are. Look at me, I'm center of the universe. Our kids are not like that. So to have Jesse, and I'm sure, our son Sam, I'm sure he saw that too. He just, he didn't say nothing about it. But, Jesse would not say something like that if it wasn't true. So that's, one of our examples. There was a video on YouTube that one of the channels that we watch, and they had taken their young daughter. She was, I don't know, I'm really really bad with ages. I'm like really really bad with ages. Um, she was in the video, that kid was probably, oh God, 3 or 4 years old maybe. She was walking, so about 3 or 4 years old, and they took her to the cemetery, and I don't remember who they were visiting. It might have been it was obviously a relative, but I don't know if it was a grandparent or a parent or somebody. But the video shows the kid standing in front of the tombstone, and then she looks like to her right, and she starts waving. And if you get a chance, check it out on YouTube. I don't know what the video is called, to be honest with you. So check it out. But she's waving, and she's just like, "Hi, hi," and she's waving, and the person filming. But okay, again, okay, yeah, I don't mean to be a doubting Thomas or a skeptic, but why would you be filming a visit to a cemetery if you weren't planning on something to happen? We have been to the cemetery many times. Well, we've been to a lot of cemeteries a lot of times, but we've been to a lot of cemeteries where our family has been buried at, or interred at, the ashes. I've never one time hauled out my phone. Oh, let me take a picture. Let me take a video of this. No, I mean, I'll take pictures of like my grandma and grandpa, my uncle Luke. He's passed. I can probably mention his name now. I've taken pictures of their tombstones. Right across the road in the cemetery from my grandma and grandpa, my uncle is my great great grandparents, and we've been to the other cemetery where my other grandma and grandpa is at. My stepdad's buried at. My cousin is buried at. So, and we've taken tons of pictures, just taking pictures. But I've never once taken out my camera. Oh, let me take a video in case something happens. So, this could all be set up. It all could be a fake. There could be someone off camera, waving back at the girl. I'm not saying that it is, okay? But I mentioned, I think the last podcast that I did, is that unless I see it personally, or I taped it personally, or I was there when one of our, members of our team, our ghost hunting team, they captured it. Other than that, I am a natural skeptic, just because I wasn't there. I don't know the circumstances behind this. So this video could have been faked. Could have been, like I said, someone off camera waving at this, little girl. I don't know, but it's kind of an interesting video. And so one other example of this is we have a friend, and she has a son, and they're still alive, so I'm not going to mention any names. Well, growing up, they moved years ago out west, I think, or maybe Florida. I don't know. They moved someplace, and her son was quite the sensitive, I guess. He could pick up a lot of things. Well, one time she told us that they were living in this house, and I guess this is kind of, yeah, I'll still mention it. This is more towards reincarnation, which I won't talk a lot about that, I guess. So I guess it's fitting because this kind of falls under the whole thing. But he said our friend's son, he was maybe 7 or 8, maybe at that time. and he said that he died out in front of the house. And his mom says, my best Minions impersonation. What? And he goes, yeah, Mom, don't you remember? I was riding a motorcycle. I got into an accident and I died right out in front of this house. And it's like, okay. She didn't know how to react to that. And she's like, okay. And basically, I guess it stopped at that. She didn't ask more questions, but he said that he died in a previous life right out in front of the house. So that falls under the reincarnation thing, but it still is applicable, I guess, to this kind of thing. So we had done an investigation at this woman's house in Jackson. Um, this falls under the animal that see things, or animals that see things. And we did an investigation at her house, and what got us over there is she said that she had three small kittens. And if you're okay, you have to get a visual picture of her house because that's kind of important. So when you walked in her front door, there was basically the living room, I guess. To the right was a staircase that went upstairs, and to the left of the staircase, going out of the living room, was a dining room, and then to the right of the dining room was the kitchen. So she was sitting in her chair. I think it was like a rocker or whatever, and she's watching TV. And she had a clear view of the dining room and the kitchen, a clear view and a clear view of the staircase. She said that her three little kittens were in front of her playing around. They're playing as kittens do. And she said that all of a sudden, all three of the kittens stopped playing. They looked towards the kitchen dining room area, and they followed something with their head. They're all sitting there, all three of the kittens. Like I said, they stopped playing. They were sitting right there. All three of them were looking, and just by moving their heads, they followed it from the kitchen into the dining room, into the living room. They turned their heads to the right, followed wherever it was up the stairs. To be important here, they did not move. The kittens did not move. They stayed right there. They followed it up the stairs with their heads, with their eyes, and then she said after about 20 seconds after they looked towards the staircase, they quit looking up the staircase and started playing again. So to me, that is the indication that the animals did see something. And we did this other investigation where the woman had recently lost her cat. It was a black cat. And this doesn't fall under, I guess, seeing things, but I guess that the animal spirits can still stay here. I guess I'll combine that reincarnation, seeing things, and the spirits staying here. And we did an investigation, and one of the pictures that I took, and I think that picture's long gone. That was like 2 or 3 hard drives ago, probably. Um, yeah, I had a picture of it looked like I took it towards the floor. It looked like a cat, and when I showed it to the homeowner, she started freaking out. She started crying, which we have a habit of making people cry. And she goes, "That was my cat that I lost 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, however many years ago it was." So I'm like, okay, cool. So that does mean that animals do stay here, and it's possible for them to stay here. So, like I said, I'm going to combine. I guess it's going to be a hosh of topic here. It's going to be possible reincarnation. Animals can see things. Children can see things, and the pets can stay here. So, in keeping in that gyrene here of the topic, I Well, we did an investigation in the city of St. John's. It's about half an hour, no, about 20, 25 minutes from here. And we once did an investigation there, and it was an older house. If I remember right, it was like a house was almost 100 years old, so it was an older house. And we had done an investigation. Well, we did an investigation there, and the reason why she wanted us to come out was because she said one time her daughter, who was young, again, I'm really bad with ages, she was probably 5 or 6 years old, and she was in her room, and the homeowner said, or the mom, homeowner, whatever, said that she came up the stairs and she had just done laundry. So she had a clothes basket with the laundry folded in it. And she is coming up the stairs of their house. And once they get to the top of the stairs, to the right, her daughter is her room. So she goes, as I was coming up the stairs, I could hear my daughter just chattering away. And she goes, I looked in her room, and she was the only one in the room. And I asked her, I'm like, honey, who are you talking to? And her daughter pointed towards the far corner of the room. She goes, that old woman right there. And her mom goes, honey, there's nobody there. I don't see anybody there. And her daughter kind of got a little bit like irate, and she like stomped her foot down. Mom, she's right there. She has her hands on her hips, her kid, and points. Mom, she's right there. Can't you see her? And her mom goes, no, honey, I can't see her. you know. So she obviously was seeing something in the corner that her mom could not see. Now, one other example that I have is it wasn't an investigation, but our friend who moved to Florida, I won't name her name in case she doesn't want her name named. I don't even know if she even listens, to the podcast. But again, out of respect. So our friend, she told us the story that her sister just had a newborn baby girl, and she had a son that was about 7 or 8 years old. And again, her mom or the mom was coming up the stairs, and her daughter's room. Her daughter was in the crib, and her son was at the side of the crib, and he was talking to the newborn girl. And she said, what I heard next was kind of freaky. She goes, it kind of sent chills up and down my spine. She goes, as I came up to the top of the stairs, and I was right, even with my daughter's room, I heard my son ask her daughter, what's it like on the other side? I forgot. I mean, can you imagine that shit? You're going up the stairs, just minding your own business, and you get to your daughter's room, who's a newborn. She's like newborn. She's like a couple of months old, okay? Newborn kid. Can't talk, obviously, Not even the gaga goo goo stuff, She can't even talk no more, or she can't talk at this point. She's too freaking young. And you had to have your son, who's, like I said, 7, 8 years old, ask your newborn daughter, what's it like on the other side? I forgot. Seriously? I mean, I wouldn't freak out, but you would freak out. The average Joe would freak out. Like, what the hell is going on here? And and so that was the story that we were told. Now, our kids, and I mentioned this before. Our son's room, this is now my office. He kept on saying that at night he heard people talking. And like I said, I said before, we attributed that to our TV because the living room is right next to his room, and we share a common wall. So that was my first take on it. Was he's just hearing the TV or hearing us talking. So it's possible that he has seen things as a child that he just didn't say anything about. Um, and then one other thing too, this kind of falls under more of, can they follow you home or can they be attached to things? But it was a child, so this is one more example that I do have. Um, my in-laws, they had bought a bed, which was the frame, the mattress, I think it was, and box spring at a garage sale. So they bring it home and they put it. I believe they put it upstairs in the spare bedroom upstairs. And almost immediately after they brought things home, they started to experience things, hearing voices. Things were being moved, and they seen a shadow or shadows. Well, my brother-in-law, who lives at home, he said that one time he was walking, I think, from the kitchen into the dining room, or from the living room into the dining room. I'm not for sure where he was going, but you have to go through his room to get to the stairs to go upstairs, where the new bed was put up at. So, I might have that story screwed up. It might have been they got it for him. No, I think they got it for upstairs. Well, anyways, so yeah, it's probably upstairs. I know I'm rambling on. I know it's the old saying, let me know who wins and continue the conversation. So let's say that the bed did go upstairs. So you had to go through his room to go upstairs to the new bed that they got at the garage sale. So he said that he was heading towards his room and he saw a little girl. She had on a dress, white socks, black shoes if I remember correctly, and a white shirt. And the dress was black, I believe. And he saw her going through his just glimpse for a short second. Her going through his room to go upstairs, obviously. So that they seen things, after they had purchased this at a actual garage sale. So, but then the activity didn't really increase. The activity was more like it's there, and uh, unless I don't know if accepted is the correct term for it, but if you live with this every day and you're not used to living with this every day, I guess it could kind of freak you out some way or the other, I guess. So it was starting to freak him out a little bit that they were experiencing this stuff. So finally, I think they connected the fact that it started right after they got this bed at a garage sale. So they threw away the bed, Granger, and basically the activity stopped. I mean, immediately after they took it out, and by took it out, I mean the bed and the mattress and the frame and everything. The activity stopped, like right there on the spot. It stopped. So that would fall under that. Now I do have one other like really freaky ass stuff here that happened. Her mom. This doesn't have anything to do with kids or anything, or animals seeing things, but it's freaky enough where I can't talk about it in like a whole podcast. So I'll talk about it in this podcast because it's just a short little maybe minute or two story example, whatever. And so what happened was her mom was looking outside, and why she's looking outside, I have no freaking idea. But she was looking outside, and she said she saw this man, tall man, and he was dressed in all black, and he was walking on all fours in front of their house, like easily walking on all fours in front of their house. Now, I could walk on all fours, and by all fours I mean hands and knees. But I couldn't go very fast. The joints don't work like they used to at one time. So, in my joints I mean my knees, not a joint that you smoke. In case, I'm just clarifying that in case you had any questions about that. So to have someone dressed in all black, walking on hands and knees down the street, and she followed him as long as she could out the window. She says she was too freaked out to go outside, and she saw him as far as she could looking out the window until he was gone. So don't know what the hell that was, man. It's weird. It's one of those, like, whatever happens. Now, I guess since we're saying about pets, could still be here. I have seen our cat Motley. She was more my cat actually. I could only feed her stuff. We had to put her down when she was 23. And we had her when she was a small kitten. And we used to have a lazy boy recliner in our living room right beside our dining room. Well, Motley would, and I would be like in the chair, reclined back, and Motley would come from her food dish or a water dish in our dining room, and she would turn the corner, and then she would jump up on the legs of the lazy boy, or more or less on my legs of the lazy boy, and she would, curl up and flop down. Well, a couple of times after she has passed or had passed, I would around the corner of my eye, and again, you see a lot of things out of the corner of your eye, and then you turn and there isn't anything there. Well, I saw out of the corner of my eye because I'm watching TV, and out of the corner of my eye, where she many times, numerous times, would, like I said, come from her food bowl, turn the corner, jump up on my legs when I have the chair out, reclining back. And a couple of times I saw out of the corner of my eye something gray walking towards me, and I'm expecting to have her jump up on my legs and curl up. And this happened a couple of times after, and they I guess I'll keep the other part for some other future one here. Let me make a note of this. The wife gave me index cards, and let me just write this down here. I have an idea for a future podcast. So let me just give me a second here. I know there's a lot of like quiet air here, but let me just do this real fast. Okay, so I have an idea. Cause like I said, paranormal with the old man. I forget stuff all the damn time. I'll get up to go someplace, and I'm like, why did I get out of the chair? And I'll sit back down, like, oh yeah, that's why. So, anyways, yeah, and one of our dogs that had passed, Scampy, I didn't like him. He was a pain in my ass. I've seen him. I'm the only one that has seen him here in the house, and I've seen him a couple of times. We have this other dog, Max, who is a Pomeranian, and I have seen him a few times here too. Just out of the corner of my eye, I'll see his rusty color coat scoot by, whatever. So and then I mean, there's been other stories. And I guess this has turned into, can pets stay here? I guess that should be a podcast all its own. But I'm already into it now, so what the hell, right? Um, and I have read a story where like they had to put down their dog. Not anything that I personally experienced, but I read it. I read it someplace, and the dog would always want to go outside, and you would hear like going towards the back door. He'd always have his paws or nails, or whatever, on the floor. You could hear him going towards the back door. And after they had put him down, or he passed, they, for a couple of times after he had passed, they heard that. They heard him walking towards the back door to be let out. And then other stories I've heard where they have put down a dog, or the dog has passed, and he used to jump up on the bed, and the couple would be in bed, reading, watching TV, whatever, and they would hear the dog that has passed come into the room, his paws, whatever, and then they would feel something jump up on their bed and curl up, which is what he would do before he passed away. So animal spirits can stay with you. They might not pass over the Rainbow Bridge, or they might come back over past the Rainbow Bridge. Who knows? So that's my examples, I guess. Kind of got off track a little bit of the initial idea, but you know what? What the hell? It all fits together, right? Right? Okay. We're all friends here. I ramble. Get used to it. It's not going to stop. So basically, that's the podcast for this week. I'm going to start like updating some stuff here as far as upcoming stuff. If you're in Michigan and stuff, we do have upcoming. Hopefully, I got to get back and email her back. a investigation possibly in a building, a three-story building. I have two presentations at libraries in October. One's in, I think it's White Lake Township, and the other one is in Romeo. Romeo is a repeat one. The one in White Lake Township is a new one that we have not been to. They want us to do an investigation first, so we're going to do the investigation in the first part of September. Then that gives us time. Now, see, now my other picture just fell down that we got when we went on a trip to London. Okay, this is weird. Someone's trying to get my attention. It didn't fall and snap like the other one did, but it fell on my wallet. So someone's trying to get my attention. Well, if anyone's here, talk to the microphone here. You guys might get an EVP. Wouldn't that be freaking cool? Come in for a podcast and get an EVP. So I'm going to take a sip of my hot chocolate that day. If someone is here and want to communicate, please talk to the microphone for like a couple seconds while I take a drink of my chocolate. Okay, that was me putting down the cup. So listen closely and see if you hear any EVPs. If you do, let me know, and I will post them someplace. I'm still trying to figure out where the hell to post my stuff. I have a website here on the podcast, Podbean. I don't know where the hell that's at. So I'm still working on that. I'm going to post pictures and stuff. So to get back to upcoming events, we are doing Bath. I'm going to email the Township Police Department here probably this week sometime to get permission. Once we have permission, which has not been a problem in the past, we are looking to do in May, the second weekend in May. We're also looking at doing a private investigation in Eloise, the former insane hospital in Westland, Michigan. Even though we tried to get with them a couple years ago, like we just started out, I sent them an email. And this is one of my not a rant, but explain stuff here, which I do not understand. We asked them, we heard that your place is, haunted. We would like to do an investigation. Blah, blah, blah. So get an email back. Oh, well, thank you for your interest, but, we have not experienced anything paranormal, so we cannot, we will not let you do an investigation, in Eloise. Okay, whatever. Fast forward, about 10 years later, I guess. More like 15 years later. All of a sudden, they're haunted. And they have a group that charges to do investigations, so they're getting money. Excuse me, I got a cough for a second. Excuse me. So, the old saying, money talks, yeah, money talks. So now they're haunted and they're doing, investigation. They take tours, all that kind of stuff. Well, we're looking at doing a private investigation, just us, the group. We need 12 people. So if anyone's interested, let me know. And if it does happen where we do, pick a date and set a date and we're confirmed, I will let you all know. So I think I've rambled enough here, and I had a couple of interesting things happen with pictures on my desk. They've both been here for 3 weeks, and neither picture has fallen down except for today. What was today? Today's the 30th? I wonder if there's any anniversaries, birthdays or anything that will cause these pictures to fall down. Anyways, I don't know. I'll have to research that. So, again, to end the podcast here, I've talked enough today. As usual, until we meet again. And very, very importantly, stay away from the light. If you know, you know. And with that, I will say bye-bye-bye.